Hello guys, today I'm going to show you the Scratch editor. If you haven't watched the previous episode, you may do now. It will be on the link in the description. So, when we want to start a new project, we need to go over to the Create button. Here we create a new Scratch project. Your Scratch website will look a little different than mine. That's because I have Scratch ads. So here we could change the name. So let's say meow. So in the Scratch editor, what we do is take out blocks from our thing over here and let's grab out of the Events tab, which you could click around tabs to go to them. So when green flag clicked, move 10 steps. You can see the effect of this here. So, the Scratch moves 10 steps, catches onto the edge. That's usual in Scratch. So, it's kind of boring, just keep clicking the flag. Don't you say, I'd like this to be less manual? Well, here we could take our moves 10 steps out, then go under the control tabs where we got the wait, the repeat, forever, and if else's. The rest of this is I will talk about later. So let's delete those ifs and forevers and wait seconds. So here there's some type of thing where you can put the block inside the script. When you put that down, you can see once you do that, this cat's still stuck on the edge, which means we need to reset the game when we start the game, obviously. So we're gonna take a go to X, Y, and 0, 0. The go to X, Y is from the motion category. You can see Scratchy, our little cat, moves once we start that project. Well, wouldn't you want this to be a little more interactive? Like if you put your mouse down, he moves? Well, we can go to the control. Let's grab a forever and an if. They're next to each other. Put the if in the forever. Then we move 10 steps into the if and the forever. Let's get rid of that repeat block. Then in our new category, our sensing category, down here you can see some weirdly shaped blocks. So like the touching, which means we're touching something, or overlapping, unlike in real life. So then we got our pressed and our mouse down, which we're going to use here. Mouse. So forever, if mouse down, then move 10 steps. Let's see the effect of this. Whee! That is fun. So So you see it still gets caught on the edge. Well, we need to check if we're on the edge. So if we are touching edge, then we need to go back to the left side of the stage. So we need to go to X, Y, but what the X do you need? So go to X, negative 240. So if we do that, you can see he gets stuck on the other edge. Why negative 240? Is that the width, the length of the stage is 480 pixels, and the center is x0, unlike some programming language you use. So we need to have that half of the stage to the left, that way. So to the left would mean we have negative x, so that's why negative 240. But when you see that, we are a little stuck on the edge, like you can't move anymore. Well, we need to change this touching edge to touching edge and the operators tab, which has all the maths you can see in the circles, is values. So we have our maths over here, and the and block, which we're going to take out. So if touching edge and, which is pretty interesting, having these inputs on a block that's not an if or if else. So and we need to be on the right side of the screen. So we need a less than, thing. So 0 on the left side of the less than. If touching edge and 0 is less than x position, which means we're on the right side, we can loop around. You can see that here. This is a pretty fun to click around and see our cats move. Well, let's see. What about we can make a collectible in this game? So we need a new sprite. So we can go down to this, choose a sprite, and we can paint. So in the editor, there's a costume editor. Now we're gonna make a yellow orb for our coin. So here we go. No outline, so transparent, which is like a swipe through. Also in the colors, in the fill, how you get a yellow color is by sliding the color to yellow. So there we got our orb. We might want to make that orb bigger. The way I like to make the spread evenly is by pressing Alt. Well, let's say for example, your circle was like this. You're bad at making circle or round things. Well, you have to press Shift and make it Shift to make it more like squarish. So let's take a rectangle tool. For example, with Shift you could do this, but without Shift it's a little difficult. That was a good try. So could get much worse than that. So, first, when we start the game, we want to go to a y of 0, which means it would be centered like this, just like a scratchy. Then we need a random x position. So, pick random in the operators tab. So, I've explained before the edges of the screen. So pick random negative 240 to 240. So it picks between this edge and that edge. And then forever, we need to go to the sensing to use a touching block. So if touching, then we need to check if we're touching the cat, which is named Sprite1 for me. If we're touching that, we need to go to a random place again. So we're gonna go to that. So we could take off the forever loop and copy this by right-clicking and choosing duplicate. So then we move back. Ah! Collecting a coin. Tuk 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 tuk. Which I should mention, we need a sound for that. So into a new tab called the Sounds tab, we need to search for a sound. So we go to choose a sound, and then we're going to use this icon here. So we're going to go to the Effects tab of this. Then let's find a good one. And I believe there's one called Collect. I'm having a hard time finding it. They're ordered in alphabetical order. I found the Collect. You can just search up Collect. So when we get the one, we could start the sound of collecting. So here, aha! Don't you hear that? I think I heard it collecting twice. Huh, wonder why is that? Well, here, we're picking random, which sometimes when we pick the random position, it's directly on Scratchy. So, a new thing, we need to click on the My Blocks section, then make a block. This may seem complex, but really, it's not too hard. So we're going to delete the block name standard, and we're going to name it Move. And, very important, tick the Run Without Screen Refresh. What this does, you may wonder, is when this happens, you can't see it happen. And, well, you can't see it midway through because it runs instantly and it refreshes after. So like at the end of the block, which we code, so like you could code it up like at the end of the block, we can't see it like if it repeats. So like repeat 10, change move 10 steps, you can't see it midway through. It just teleports 100 pixels. So, we need to replace these things with the move block. So go to my blocks, then pop in the move. So move, here we go. So we want to go to the X random, but if we are touching the sprite, then we want to go to another random position. So we need something from the control, and we need a repeat until. So what a repeat until does works like the other blocks. It repeats until this input is true. So repeat until not touching the player. So we don't hear that terrible sound. We don't hear that terrible sound as much. Why we don't hear it as much is because we move, then it moves to a spot where we aren't, are over, then we move back into the coin. So we can't fix that. So you notice you can't move left here, nor up and down. Well, that's because we don't have any controls for that. So, one thing special about the move steps is that it moves in the direction you're facing. So, in the motion carry, we're gonna point towards mouse pointer before we check. And you can see this is working pretty good. But you may notice that Scratch Cat would freak out here. Well, what we need to protect that from happening. So if we are touching the mouse, so automatically here, we need to move backwards, which would be negative 10 steps. And we can attach this back. Now you can see that this isn't like glitching out anymore. So you may notice that the coins aren't like going up and down now. There's a reason for this. Here, in the move, we need to duplicate our pick random. And here, we don't need this anymore because the repeat until takes care of it. So trash that by moving it into this tab over here. So what's the inputs for this? Well, up and down are our sources. So it's 360 pixels from the top to the bottom. So we're gonna have that. So negative 180 to 180. And this, once we collect a coin, it should be moving randomly. So you remember when we when we move off the right, we go back to the left. What about moving to the left? Yeah, that is a problem. So, we can duplicate this if touching edge, and the zero's less than x position. But we need a 0 is greater than x position. So let's get a greater. 0 is greater than x position. So we need to go to the right hand part. So 240. So you can see here that there is a mysterious bug happening over here. We're stuck on the edge again. So this is because we're using something that isn't accurate. So if touching edge. So we can make this better by having, so take out the touching edges and safely tuck this away and remove the and. So we need here, we can take advantage here. So if this here, if 0 is greater than, we need a negative 235, which is a pretty good value. And then we also need a 235 here. But I realize a problem here. You can see it'll start flashing on the edges. Let's remove point towards the mouse pointer. We also need to reset that when we begin by pointing in direction 90 or motion carry. You can see that it doesn't work too well. It doesn't work. It's clinging on the edge. If we're going right, then we go to negative 240, which then triggers this, which moves it to 240. So he's stuck on x 240. We can insert the point towards the mouse pointer again, but we need to change this to negative 235 and 235. You can now see that this works. Maybe. Well, the reason for this is that your mouse doesn't move off stage too much. It works left and right. It's funky, but it doesn't work up and down, which I do not like. So we need to duplicate this. And we need to change all the go to x's to have a x of 0. Not the ones up here though, must swarm. And switch these two x positions for y positions. Then we need to change this value to 175 and negative 175. So in the 175, put it to negative 175. I made a mistake there. Then in the negative 175, put 175. Not 4. So we can see here that loops left and right and up and down. So let's see. We could spice up the background a little bit here by changing the stage to, then we could convert to bitmap in the backdrops, which is interesting because you could use a fill. And let's change our color to blue sky. Fill the background like that. Also, here, I'd like to have like a little white dots. So you go to the pen and make this more coinish. I made a mistake, a little peckle, so you can actually select it. Might be a little difficult, but you can drag select, which makes it easier. So, this game is our chase game. Nice job. You have officially made a nice chase game. Bye.